Hello, everyone, and welcome to enVision Together, going to our next level best. I am so incredibly excited to introduce you to Jenny Sue. She has a wonderful spirit. I've talked to her previously in a pre-chat and then a little bit even today before we got started. And I just love her energy. But now I want her to go ahead and just introduce herself in her own way, but with a little bit of direction from me. We'd like to know a bit about her childhood and upbringing, what has brought her to who she is today. So, with that, Jenny Sue, will you give us the full introduction of who you are?
Thank you so much. I am so honored to spend some time with you today, Pamela. And I'll start from now and work my way backwards. Right
Okay.
now, I am a trauma healing consultant and a global educator.
Mm,
I am the founder and CEO of an international counter-trafficking organization that has a presence now in 43 nations.
wow.
So that's where I am now,
Mhm,
and actually living happily ever after,
mhm.
which is a remarkable place to sit in because my once upon a time did not start here, and that's the what informed my work or equipped me for my work was a history of sexual exploitation.
Mm.
So my grandfather started selling me to other men for sex at the age of 4.
Oh.
And by 5, I was praying every night that God would just let me die. At 6, I
Mm.
had first symptoms of a sexually transmitted infection. At 8, I went to a church on a Sunday morning and sat behind the man who had paid to rape me the night before. At 9, had a particularly violent encounter that fractured my neck in 2 places and my pelvis in 3 places. And the exploitation went on for a total of 14 years until just the day after a failed suicide attempt. God intervened in that situation. I found out that I was pregnant. God awoken in me this mama bear instinct to protect
Mm.
this innocent baby. And that was the pivot point. I was finally able to tell a counselor enough about what was happening for her to intervene and get myself and my son to safety. And that's where my journey toward freedom began and has led to my global counter trafficking work.
Wow. Wow. So I knew a lot of this information, but not in the way that you just expressed it. And I got to tell you, it hit differently
Mm,
hearing you describe it and even tell me the age and even the stuff about, being in church right next to a person who bought time with you just
yeah.
the day before. Um, that that sits deep. So, but I want to thank you for being so vulnerable and sharing that, helping us know um, who you are, at least in that vein, and we'll get to
Mm,
know a little bit more of who you are, just kind of, I guess, in a more rounded, well-rounded sense as we go through the conversation, because I know you're more than just those experiences that happen. I do have a quick question I want to interject, um, that's still related to what you just shared. Was your mom around at, at
that is a great question and a common question. And the reason I tell my story the way that I do is because my mom was functionally absent. She
Mm,
that's how and why the exploitation happened and continued. My dad was an alcoholic. My mom was addicted to my dad. And so whenever our household was in crisis, which was pretty frequently, I think with the best intentions, they sent me 3 hours away to my grandparents' house. And
mm,
so that 3 hour buffer of time and space allowed my grandfather extensive access and plenty of time to plan for recovery from any injuries I sustained.
wow. So it was even injuries.
Uh huh.
Oh,
Significant injuries. So much so that Oh, well, over time, I have been pregnant 17 times and had 14 losses, three beautiful live babies, and a whole host waiting for me in glory someday.
Wow. Okay.
So, pretty extensive damage.
Yeah. Sorry about that, man. So as a survivor of human trafficking, um, it's been, a daunting thing, as you've shared with us. But what was it about you that made you say, okay, I'm out of it, but what about all those people who are still in? Let me do something about it. Because you know what? A lot of people have experienced it, but not everybody has the passion you demonstrate to help others. It reminds me of the analogy I want to use is like Harriet Tubman.
Mm,
She was delivered from slavery and she kept risking her own life to go back and get others out. And while you may or may not be in some degree of physical danger, it's a spiritual journey, it's an emotional journey, it's a mental journey. Um, I'm sure there's lots of times where you get triggered so can you just tell us how you have this heart to do this work?
mm. Gosh, I just want to say thank you. I'm awestruck and humbled that I would be mentioned in any even peripheral way to the great Harriet Tubman. She is
Mhm.
obviously one of my favorite heroines of all time. So,
Mhm.
gosh, that
Mhm.
that she would come up in this conversation. I'm deeply, deeply moved. I would say, um, a lot of people can credit human resilience and the human spirit, and that's all good. For me, faith is an integral part of who I am, how I survived, what I really, really think I wouldn't be here had not Jesus shown up for me.
Mhm.
And the first time I met him was at 4 years old, right after the first time I was raped, and he kept coming for me in the darkness.
Mhm.
So I don't want to go too much into that. I don't want to
Mhm.
proselytize or offend
Mhm.
anybody.
Mhm.
But my faith is a really critical piece
Mhm.
for how I have survived, and now how I work to bring others, move others towards freedom. And in reality, I'm not a hero like Harriet. When I first started feeling the sense that God was calling me to work in counter trafficking, I was mad about it. I was like, no, are you
Mhm.
kidding? The audacity
Mhm.
of a God that would pull me out of the dark and then ask me to go back into it. I
Mhm.
was like, no, not doing it. Been there, done that. Close the door. Don't want to go there anymore. But in reality, that darkness really was carved into my bones. And when I see it echoed in the world around me, I cannot sit by passively and allow it to unfold. That mama bear instinct
Mhm.
that awoke in me when I was 17
Mhm.
has never subsided. In fact, it probably rages louder in a
Mhm.
more fierce way now than it did then. So I didn't enter it willingly. I entered it begrudgingly. But so much of my history and my story of exploitation really unfolds because people were complicit. They did see and they didn't intervene, or they should have known and they didn't know how to intervene. And had somebody stepped in, my exploitation, the violence against me, might have stopped much sooner and healing begun much sooner. And I can't be that person. I can't be the person that sees it and remains complicit in it.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, I learned as a child, there was a couple of times that I tried to fight back or tried to run away, and I learned some really brutal, brutal lessons that
Mm,
my survival depended on silence and submission.
mm.
And I've spent a whole lifetime recovering my voice. And in part, it's one of the things that I'm so grateful for to you, Pamela, to share this
Mm.
time with you today, because this is a gift from you to my soul for me to reclaim my voice, to stand
Wow.
up and roar that exploitation is still happening and we can't be complicit in it. It's time
Wow.
to rise up and fight against it. So thank you.
You're welcome, and thank you. I mean, I'm honored to have you on my show. And again, as I said before, you're being very transparent and very vulnerable, and I applaud you. And I couldn't provide your voice if you weren't willing to come on. Um, and the whole idea of this show is for us to help others to overcome, to go to their next
Mm.
level. And certainly we want people who have been abused in this way to go to their next level. So thank you. Um, I was listening to you and I couldn't help but think about what you said about all the silent voices, the people that didn't speak up and say something. Um, do you find in your work today that that's still very prevalent in what's happening to people right now? People are aware and just being quiet still?
I think yes and no.
Mm,
Yes and no. I think when I was growing up a long time ago, what happened at home stayed at home. You don't talk about, you don't air your dirty laundry.
mm,
So even if like a teacher at school called my mom, saw what the teacher saw, but didn't intervene to stop what was happening. I think that back in those days, I don't even know what like the foster care system or child protective services looked like in the late 70s, early 80s when my exploitation was unfolding. So people were silent because you don't talk about those things, you don't ask those questions. It's just culturally inappropriate.
mhm,
Now, in our current day, I think there is quite a bit more awareness around violence against marginalized people or
mhm,
children or women,
mhm,
marginalized people in general. And we do talk about it. However, in our current time frame, we are so busy scurrying and scrolling, scurrying from point A to point B, busy, 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 busy. I've got to do this and this and this and pick up the kids and go to soccer and make dinner and da 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 da, da all the things
mhm,
just to live.
mhm,
And we're so busy that when we have a single moment of reprieve, our heart and our mind is still running 100 miles an hour. So we pick up our phone and we scroll through social media and we just scroll,
mhm.
scroll, scroll because our body's trying to calm down from
Yeah,
being at such a fast pace.
yeah.
And so because we're scurrying and scrolling, we're less aware of what's happening around us.
Mm,
Every time you go to the grocery store or the doctor's office, the dentist, church, school, you are encountering people who are experiencing domestic violence, sexual violence, terminal diseases. There's
mm,
people that are hurting all around us.
mhm,
And and so rather than as a child, people knowing but not knowing what to say, now we have a great deal of education about what's happening, but we're too busy to see and engage
mm,
in it.
mm.
So there's some similarities and some differences.
Yeah.
But both places, if we had a Venn diagram, both places leave a huge group of people unseen.
Hmm. Wow. And I'm reminded of a few years back, I was part of a meeting where some police officers and some human traffic people who are trying to stop it as you are
Yeah.
were present doing a presentation, and they gave some statistics, and I don't remember the exact numbers, but it was so high of the percentage of people. Now, they weren't just coming from the vantage point of the abused, but the abusers. They were giving
Yeah.
us the percentage of people involved. Um, and it was staggering. It was
Yeah.
crazy high to the point that I looked around the room and I said, if those numbers are accurate, somebody in this room, this very room I'm in, is participating. And maybe somebody's, some people.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that really opened my eyes. And you are opening my eyes again. Because I got to say, that
Mm.
was years ago. And I want to admit that I became a little dull to it affecting me in that way. But literally everywhere I go, no matter what we're doing, somebody in my proximity of a grocery
Yeah.
store, obviously in a mall as big as that is, a doctor's office, there's people right in front of me, and I'm just not seeing it, noticing it.
Yeah.
So,
And that is true on both sides, Pamela. Not only are people in your circle, whether you're in a classroom or a mall or a church or a doctor's office, not only are people within reach that are experiencing violence, but there's people within your reach that are perpetrating that
yes,
violence
that's what I'm
in all
saying.
of those places,
Yeah.
in doctors' offices and lawyers' offices and churches and schools. There are people that are perpetrating that violence. Right now, one of the fastest growing trends in trafficking in the US is high school kids
Mm.
exploiting younger kids. And so high school upperclassmen, like juniors and seniors,
Wow.
and primarily girls, the cool girls, the fancy girls, the ones that have the status and the popularity, will identify a wannabe girl that's seventh, eighth grade, ninth grade that isn't in the cool crowd. They will invite her to a party. While she's at the party, they will dose her with some intoxicant, and when she's under the influence, they'll take sexually explicit photos of her. Then it's called
Mm.
sextortion. They will use those photos with this kid. If you don't do what we tell you, we're going to send these to your dad, to the youth pastor, to all over school. And so the kid, driven by shame, grief,
Wow.
they went to the party, they drank the drink. They're feeling, be clear, they are not to blame,
Yeah.
but the child in this position, faced with sexually explicit photos under the threat that they're going to be distributed everywhere, is now under the power of these upperclassmen or girls. And they will, these kids still live at home. Their parents think they're at an after school club and they come home at 6 p.m. after being at Motel 6 or whatever the hotel is, not that
Wow.
one by name, but at a local motel
Yeah.
being raped for profit.
Wow.
So the statistics are astounding. It's over 75% of individuals that are trafficked are first trafficked by a family member or romantic partner.
Hmm.
The next, well over 20%, is trafficked initially by a trusted person. So, somebody that they knew, somebody in their community, somebody that they had some measure of respect and trust for. It
Mhm.
is a very, very small minority of individuals that are initially trafficked by a stranger.
Wow.
And globally, we see at least 42% of traffickers are women,
Wow.
which is a stunning thought. Clearly, not the majority of the buyers. The majority of the buyers are male, not entirely, but the majority. But 42% of those that traffic other people are women.
I am just trying to figure out how our hearts have become so callous that a teenage girl could put a junior high school girl in a situation like that and feel nothing for money?
Right.
How did we get here as a
Right. For money,
society?
for status. It's like mean girls to the next level.
Ooh, that's beyond mean.
Right. It is.
Destroy a human being for fun, for money, for coolness, for selfish reasons, whatever it
Right.
is.
Right.
Wow.
And that's a great question. I would love to know, what are your thoughts? How did we get here? Pamela, what do you think?
Well, I think as I think most believers would would surmise that the times we're living in, um, evil is present.
Mm-hmm.
Um, a falling away from having the core values and core beliefs that could sustain us when our fleshly desires would want to take control. There used to be something that would temper that, but
Mm.
society has changed so much where we're not raising people. Okay, we're both Christians, so we can talk about it from that vein, but let's take even being Christian out of it. If we just talk in general about morals and ethics and values of any kind,
Right.
we used to have something. People used to show up with something that was a
Yeah.
guide. Even if they weren't living it out in their own lives, they promoted it. So
Right.
you might not be living that way, but you showing up as a teacher or a principal and saying it is having a positive effect on the next generation, even if you're not walking it out. We
Right.
don't even have people sharing. We don't even have people who, and then a lot of things have happened in society that makes people afraid to share.
Yeah.
It's just so much going on.
Yeah.
Um, but I
I,
think the core of it is spiritual.
mm-hmm.
Um, and I don't know. I want to
Yeah.
say I'm going to take it even on another level. I think a lot of it would have to do even with intercession.
Mm. Yep.
I consider myself an intercessor, but like in this conversation I already shared with you, you brought to my remembrance something that when I first heard it, I'm praying, it's on my mind. Even in this conversation, I I tend to think of adults as the biggest violators, the
Mm.
abusers. It didn't occur to me that when I'm sitting in the dentist's office, it could be the 15, 16-year-old girl I'm sitting next to that's
Right.
an abuser. You're opening my eyes to look at this problem in a more expanded view and a healthy reminder to keep it. I mean, I feel bad saying that I would need a healthy reminder because it is so prevalent in our American society, but all over the world. Um, Now, of course, I address it in prayer from time to time, but this conversation is bringing it even more on the forefront. And I'm hoping that the people that are listening to us today hear all of our heart, hear even the
Mm.
call for more prayer and intercession, whatever you can do from whatever sphere of influence you have, from, um, you know, being prayerful, but also being watchful. Um,
Mm.
you may be looking at a bad situation that's just not registering in your mind. That we would all just pay more attention because, my God, if we just think about it, what if that was happening to our own child or someone we love dearly? But that watchful eye needs to not just be for the victim, but the perpetrator,
Yep.
identifying those people who have those behaviors. We watch out for bullies, but I don't always take it to the point of you're the type of bully that's grooming and inflicting
Mm.
harm for the sake of control, that would lead down such a path. So
Right.
this is Very enlightening conversation.
You
So
know,
how would you deal with that question?
I'm just going to bounce off of one of the last things you said and the importance of prayer. I have a really significant story about
Mm,
prayer and how
mm,
impactful it is. So perhaps this might encourage some of your listeners. Several years ago, my husband and I were working in a ministry, and there was a new bookkeeper that was hired to come work in the ministry. And at that point, I was a homeschool mom. I was a sidekick to my husband doing this ministry. I went to meet the bookkeeper at her house just to have tea, just to get to know
mm,
each other.
mm,
And as we were having tea, I felt this overwhelming sense from the Holy Spirit that I was supposed to tell this woman some of my history, some of my story.
mm,
But this is probably 20 years ago, and I didn't talk publicly at all
mm,
about my story at
mm,
that point. I could count on one hand the people that knew my history. But as we shared tea, I just had this like burning sensation in my chest like, you've got to tell her, you've got to tell her, you've got to tell her. So, fine. So, at one point, I worked up my courage and I said, you know what? I don't know why this isn't something I talk about, but I feel like I'm supposed to tell you something about my past.
mm,
And she said, absolutely. Tell me. And I said, well, when I was young, my grandfather was a wicked bad guy,
mm,
which is a lot of times how survivors will disclose. We call it drip disclosures. Like we
mm,
tell a little bit and see what the response is to see whether we're safe to move in or not, right?
mm,
And so that's what I said. My grandfather was a wicked bad guy. And she leaned forward and she said, do you want to tell me anything more about that? And one of the things that had been all afternoon bubbling up, wanting to spill out, was a particular event that happened when I was 9 years old. And so I said, well, when I say wicked bad guy, what I mean is he was selling me to other men for sex.
mm,
And she said, wait, don't say anything else.
mm.
What you're wanting to tell me, did it happen in the summer of 1981? And I said, it did. And she said, in the summer of 1981, she was a young mother in Texas. I was a 9-year-old kid in Missouri. No intersection of our families. We did not know each other. But in the summer of 81, she woke up one night having had a terrible nightmare. And what she saw in her nightmare was a tremendous act of violence. But when she woke up, she believed with her whole heart, this is happening right now. This wasn't a dream. This is unfolding right now. She got on her knees, she prayed and prayed. And for days, she was sick. And she prayed for this little girl and what she had endured, and prayed and prayed and prayed and prayed. And so she started telling
Mm.
me the story about what happened that night that I had never in my whole life spoken out loud. And she told me moment by moment what had happened that
Oh my
night.
goodness.
And she said, I was so struck with grief that I prayed, and I prayed for weeks. And then she said, and over time, I lost the fervor. I didn't pray every day, but I prayed every few weeks. And then I prayed every couple of months. And then just whenever Holy Spirit would remind me over the years, I have continued to pray for that little girl.
Mm,
Even this morning, I prayed
mm,
for that
mm,
little girl.
mm,
And so God had woke her up in the middle of the night when I was 9 years old, in the middle of an event that should have killed me,
wow.
to meet me there, to fight for me
Wow.
there. And so she was mobilized to pray, and I think her
Mm,
prayers were a strategic portion not only of my survival that night, but equipping and empowering me to sit where I sit now. So prayer
wow.
matters.
Oh my goodness. I am so glad you shared that. Like I have chills going all through my body. I don't know if it's a chill or warmth.
Uh-huh.
But my goodness. And it's really spoken to me too, because sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night and I'm interceding, and I'm gonna be honest, I'm wrestling with my flesh sometimes. I'm sleepy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But That story helps me. I hope it helps so many people that, shake that sleep off. And I mean, I do, but I'm gonna try to hold on to this
Yeah.
so that I shake it off more quickly.
Well, and we need to shake off our sleepiness when we're awake also.
Yes. Oh my God.
And I hope it not only encourages, your tribe to be awake, to be proactively fighting against the darkness in prayer, but I hope for any individuals that hear this that have experienced violence and feel unseen. That was the
Mhm.
healing for me, was that this woman saw me. She saw me at 9 years old when nobody else was seeing me
Wow.
from a distance.
Yeah.
No, neither one of us would have.
In the
I mean,
spirit.
I can only imagine that afternoon when I was sitting there having tea, like God leaning forward on his throne, going, shh, watch this. He had been waiting 20 some odd years for our paths to intersect
Wow, that is
and
beautiful too, though.
us to discover what he had been doing for both of us, for her and for me. So, for anybody who's experienced violence, I would love for them to be encouraged that God sees, he takes note,
Mhm.
he notices, it matters. He is at every moment fighting for our redemption and our freedom.
I
And
love that.
ultimately, he wins.
I love that. And I'm so glad that you pointed that out because at the end of the day, that's what we all want. We want to be seen. If you're
Mm-hmm.
wrestling with low self-esteem, maybe you've never been in human trafficking or abused in that way, but whatever type of abuse that would bring you to low self-esteem or whatever it is, you want to be seen. You want to know. And at the end of the day, we want to be loved. We want to
Right.
know that somebody cared enough for us. And I think that's so beautiful to remind people that you are seen. And we do have a God that is taking account and doesn't take these things lightly. What I didn't share with you is, and we're staying on this vein of prayer, intercessory prayer.
Yeah.
Some years ago, um, I had a vision. It was either just before or just after the COVID. Um, and what I saw is myself walking through this environment, and I knew I was in India, and I knew because of the way the people looked, the way they were
Mm-hmm.
dressed, and I was walking through this building, and it was young people, it was children, and I was praying for them, and I knew that they were being abused, and that's how uh, I knew God wanted me to intercede for children in India
Mm.
who were being abused in this way. And I did. I did it quite a lot after he showed me
Mm-hmm.
that vision. And kind of like your person said, it kind of dwindles down, but from time to time it keeps coming back to me. And I lift up those children in India. In fact, what is so interesting is God spoke to me this very morning and told me to
Mm.
intercede for India. So it's so interesting that I didn't know I was about to have this conversation with you where this would come up and the importance of intercessory prayer and
Right.
um
Apparently, Holy Spirit did.
right.
And it matters. And what a glorious thing it's going to be someday, Pamela, when your life intersects with these children,
Wow.
maybe on this side of heaven, maybe in glory, but at some point, your lives
Wow.
intersect and you have that, oh, it's you
Mm-hmm.
moment.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
That
And
matters.
it does matter. And I just love you have such a graceful beautiful spirit in showing us and helping us know about this subject. And I can't help but think, and actually started thinking this, I think in the first window when you first started talking today,
Mm,
since we started recording. Um, God prepares us for the work He intends for us. And more often than not, that preparation involves what my grandmother would have called bought sense.
Mm,
Having to
that's a good word. Bought sense. That's a good word. That'll preach, Grandma.
um, so you know it by experience, but you can know things by the spirit as well. But all of it together is such a rich um anointing, I'll say,
Mm,
to get this work done. It's like Jesus, he said, he came and God wrapped himself in flesh so he could know what it's like, know what
mhm,
we experience, be touched and feel the things that we go through, the sufferings. Um, and I know we don't like to hear it. We probably wouldn't sign up for it, although I think this is just me talking.
mhm.
I think in heaven, before we jumped in our mother's belly, our spirits, I think we probably did sign up.
Maybe.
I think we probably did say, I think God was like, who will go? Who can I send? Because,
Yeah.
he said he knew us before he formed us in our mother's womb. And I think it's a possibility that God could have said, this is the assignment I have for you, or who will do it? And we said, okay, I will. And part of our life's journey is piecing together what we signed up for.
Mm. I think that's a beautiful picture. I often teach from Job. If you read the story of Job, you've
Yeah.
got a really curious scenario where um I think I lost you.
Hello, everyone. Unfortunately, my interview with Jenny Sue was interrupted by poor Wi-Fi connection. We did reconnect and continue the second half of the interview, but somehow that portion got lost into cyberspace. But neither one of us are the type to give up, so even still, we tried to connect to just re-record the second half of the interview, and scheduling conflicts and sometimes emails going into spam, we were not able to get together and re-record that. And I am really saddened by that because this was one of my favorite interviews, and it even just got better as we continued. So I'm really sad that we don't have that second part, but I do want to go ahead and share the wonderful first half that we were able to record together. So this um, little check-in that I'm doing right now is just letting you know why the interview stops where it does. But I'm also going to give you just a quick little recap about some of the things that we talked about at the end of the interview. So we talked about resilience, and Jenny Sue was so transparent and open to share about her experiences, her story, her reflections, and how important her faith is and was in helping her get to the place where she is now, where she's not just a survivor, but she's out there helping others. One of the things that I find so amazing about Jenny Sue is she actually reminds me of a modern day Harriet Tubman. Lots of people get free from this life of being forced into human trafficking, but few actually go back and get others and change policies and work with government and go around the world ensuring that others are free from such terrible existence. Um, and so I commend her and applaud her for the work that she is committed to. We talked about how even the things that you go through in life can sometimes be a guide, oftentimes is a guide for purpose, and how we can find ourselves ministering and helping others in areas that We didn't know was coming, but our life kind of uh, guided us there through having such experiences, but then wanting and having the heart and the compassion to help others. We also talked about the importance of people moving forward after not just seeing themselves as a victim, but being able to transform their lives and live a whole, happy life. So that part of the conversation touched on the importance of um, a good, healthy concept, mental health, um, and things like that. So I'm not doing it justice. Our conversation was so much more delightful, but I wanted to give you an idea of where our conversation went. But more importantly, actually, is to also just make sure that you know how to further engage with Jennisue. So I'm going to leave that information as well. So again, I am so thankful for Jennisue Jensen and her willingness to be on my show, tell her story, tell us about the wonderful work that she's doing around the world. I thank her for her transparency and her advocacy and for her passion toward the work that she does. Um, as I said before, lots of people have survived this, but they didn't necessarily go back and help others. Or maybe they did it in some other way, that's their own way. But again, I applaud her for what she does. Um, if you want to learn more about her work, please engage with Jennisue Jensen by DMing her on her social media, such as on Facebook. Um, she also hosts the Journey of Becoming retreats, and it's designed as a sacred space for those ready to trade survival and have it transformed um, into, I think, an exciting, healthy position like Jennisue finds herself in today. So, if you want to engage further with Jennisue Jensen and the work that she does and learn more about it, please contact her on her social media. And again, I'm so thankful that she was a guest. She also thanked me for having her on the show, but obviously it's my delight and my complete honor. So, with that, I hope you did enjoy this episode. And I'm sure you did. And I really pray and hope that you get in touch with Jennisue and learn more about the work that she's doing. Bye, everyone.